Hello, fantasy football fans. Welcome to the Week 12 episode of the 9 Route, the fantasy football show that goes deep to help you win. I'm your host, Austin Lee, and I'm joined, as always, by fellow Football Guys writer, Mr. Alex Miglio. How you doing tonight, man?
Staying warm, because I live in California, but no.
It's a blustery 50 degrees out there.
I read somewhere today that it's actually snow. There's snow in all 50 states, even California. So stay warm out there. I wouldn't want to be a Buffalo native right now. It looks like they're swarmed with snow over there.
Unless you've got a shovel and you want to earn $10 an hour. That's what I hear.
And a free ticket. And a free ticket to the game.
That's true. I don't know. I've been to a snow seat at Gillette Stadium before, and I'm going to cross that one off my bucket list and not go back. And I'm
never
sure
do that again. Yes.
Is worse. So good luck to you Buffalo fans out there. We've got lots of news like that crazy Jets-Buffalo game that we'll talk about in a little bit, as well as lots of injuries, and we'll give you our DFS picks of the week, our stacks of the week, and tell you what our cash game and tourney plays are for Week 12. So let's dive right into it. We've got Thursday Night Football, Kansas City at Oakland, a divisional barn burner ahead of us. There's not a ton of fantasy guys here, I feel like, besides Jamal Charles. Do you have anything you want to talk about this game, or should we just move along?
What, you don't like Junior Hemingway for the Kansas City Chiefs?
Whenever I hear his name, I think of Sean Connery in The Last Crusade. Junior! I don't know. Random thing.
No, but yeah, I like to fade Thursday night games. I've learned that lesson the hard way several times. Yes, there will be players that do well. No, you can not predict who they are usually. But Jamal Charles seems to be a safe bet. I think it's a great matchup for him. The only concern I have with Charles this week, if you're playing him in DFS anyway, is the fact that he got a bunch of touches last week, and it's a short week. So I don't know if that's going to make, Andy Reid, it's Andy Reid. Maybe we'll see a week where Jamal Charles runs the ball 9 times for 27 yards, and everybody will be cursing his name. But it seems to be a pretty safe play.
Yeah. I think what is safe is that Alex Smith is not going to throw 50 times and throw a bunch of deep passes to Dwayne Bowe. That's not what's going to happen. So, Charles, if you got him, otherwise look elsewhere. Let's move on to the 1 o'clock Eastern games on Sunday. That's 10 a.m. for your West Coasters. And so let's kick it off with the Cleveland at Atlanta game. There's been some running back news. Maybe some clarity here in the Cleveland backfield. Is that what you're praising here?
No, I just the game sounds like such a great game in the making. The Browns versus.
Hey, it's the first place Atlanta Falcons and the winning record Cleveland Browns. This is
right.
Critical game.
Right. The 4-6 Falcons. Earlier this season, this is total non sequitur. I was joking that the Saints would win the division at 7-9 and beat the Seahawks at home with a massive run by Mark Ingram. That would be just poetic justice right there.
That is not a bad call.
Yeah, right. But back to this game. Ben Tate was cut today or yesterday, and that was big news. Certainly surprising news. And he wounded. He landed.
He wounded, and then
he wounded his leg. He landed his wound.
Minnesota.
Yes, with the Vikings. And so that leaves Isaiah Crowell and Terrence West as the top 2 running backs. So I like them to split time 50-50. I mean, I think we're seeing kind of a back and forth in Cleveland. Terrence West had 26 carries a couple weeks ago. This week it was Isaiah Crowell who carried the load. But I like them to kind of even things out going forward. And it's a great matchup. So I would not mind starting either one of these, especially in DFS where they're both pretty cheap.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. And ESPN Cleveland's Tony Grossi has kind of gotten this right about half an hour before game time the past 2 weeks. So kind of listen out to the rumors, especially from him, right before kickoff, because he's kind of been spot on in terms of who's going to lead the pack in that backfield. And we might get some whispers right before kickoff. Let's. Oh, hey, we got a question from Jill. Jill's one of our favorite listeners, and she's asking about Josh Gordon. That's the other big news for this.
It's Josh Gordon week. How did we forget to celebrate this at the beginning of the podcast? It's Josh Gordon week.
Oh my goodness! What does one do to celebrate Josh Gordon week? Is there
pretend I'm throwing confetti out here? Yes.
Oh yeah, for those of you listening on the audio version, he's throwing lots of confetti.
Yes.
He prepared lots of props for today's show. It's very beautiful.
We blew our budget. We blew our budget for the rest of the year on confetti.
The whole effects budget on week 12, celebrating Josh Gordon's return. We've been practicing for this moment, and here it is. Yay! Jill is asking. Will she be rewarded this week, finally, for having stashed Josh Gordon on a short bench this week? Is Josh Gordon going to pop off and return to, 200-yard games and 2 touchdowns against Atlanta this week?
I personally have Josh Gordon catching 13 passes for 343 yards and 4 touchdowns this week. So, yes, definitely.
That seems reasonable.
Yes. It's funny.
That seems reasonable.
I think anything. I mean, we have no idea what's going to happen. He's been kind of practicing with the team, but I heard something about him being out of shape. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Even if he plays half the snaps, I think he's definitely worth starting. And I saw a couple of projections this week that were pretty lofty. Brian Fontaine, our friend Brian Fontaine, I think projected him for 7 catches for 129 yards and a touchdown. That would be fantastic. I don't know that he's going to get to that many receptions just because I don't know how much time he's going to be on the field, but he certainly has the capability of doing that.
Yeah, with that kind of upside, you got to get him in your lineup. I've got him outside my top 15 at receiver, but he's still a guy you're going to start. I think he's, conservatively a low-end wide receiver too, with number 1 receiver upside clearly based on what he did last year. So yes, Jill, I think that you're going to see some reward this week. I think that next week maybe will be, in the weeks going on will be better. His first week back may not be his big week. But we will get to see the speedster out there trying to burn the secondary of the Atlanta Falcons. Speaking of Ben Tate that we were talking about before, he went to Minnesota, and Minnesota's hosting the Green Bay Packers this week. And I want to hear about what you think Tate's impact is over in Minnesota. Now, remember, Matt Asiata also has a concussion. He's going through concussion protocol. Does this spell doom for Jerick McKinnon and his value?
Well, Ryan Bozer, another fantasy guy who's a Minnesota Vikings fan, kind of made the point for me here today on Twitter when he said, "Well, how is he going to impact Jerick McKinnon's value when he scored 0 touchdowns this season?" So it doesn't really matter.
So what value, basically?
Yeah, exactly. So I think actually, I think McKinnon still has the upside this week. That whether or not Tate is there, I don't think Tate's going to really do anything. Now, if Asiata's out, Tate's probably going to get some time just by virtue of, McKinnon can't play every snap. But I think McKinnon could actually have a pretty nice game.
Yeah, I think so too, especially against Green Bay. And I think that Asiata's time might be the most impacted by Tate arriving here. I feel like Tate could be an upgrade over Asiata instead of taking away a ton of time from McKinnon here.
We've seen the end of the 3-touchdown day while averaging 2.3 yards per carry, I think.
I don't know. All he does is score turkeys. All he does is get 3 touchdowns in a game. He's not able to get 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns. He only gets 3. That's how he works. And then obviously in Minnesota, we can't talk about them without talking about Adrian Peterson. He's not really going to play this year. That's the deal. If you haven't heard all the details, he's not playing this year.
Yeah, I'm 99% sure that you can drop him.
Yeah, he got suspended for the rest of the year. He's appealing, but then an arbitrator said that the NFL can keep him on the commissioner's exempt list the rest of the year, and that's just what the NFL will fall back on. They just don't really want him playing this year. So I don't expect to see him this year. Cut bait, move on, pick up a guy like Crowell or West or whatever the running back flavor of the week is. Let's talk Cincinnati at Houston. Giovanni Bernard has been practicing, but offensive coordinator Hugh Jackson is saying he will be eased in, according to Bengals.com. You have any optimism for Bernard here, or is he more of a leech on Hill's value this week?
I think Hill's got Bernard's got a lot of upside, so it's tough for me to say bench him in redraft leagues if he's playing. I'd say that obviously he's got more value in PPR leagues. I think he's when they say ease him in, I'd say he could probably get 15 touches. Like that's not bad. So he gets 11 carries, 4 catches, or something like that. So I would not trust that backfield in DFS right now, just because I don't like the matchup very much, and we don't know what the workload's going to be. So tread with caution.
Yeah, I would imagine that it wouldn't surprise me if Hill got more touches the rest of the year than Bernard does. I think it's going to be pretty close to an even split. I think Hill's going to see a lot of the first and second down work, and Bernard's going to see all the passing down work and a little bit more. It's not like he's going to be relegated to change of pace guy, but I think this is going to be a lot more of a timeshare than what we saw sort of early in the season before Bernard got hurt. So, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I would, play Bernard as a flex play this week and Hill as like a low-end running back too. Kind of stay away, like you said, if you have other options. But I think they're both playable if you don't have options. We mentioned at the top of the show the winter wonderland that is Buffalo. There's whatever 1 million feet of snow on top of their stadium right now.
Some sort of number close to that.
Yeah, it's million. Maybe it's 7 feet. Maybe it's 4 feet. It's measured in feet.
If you look at a picture of Ralph Wilson Stadium right now, no offense to Bills fans, it looks like a giant toilet seat right now because it's all white and it just looks like a toilet seat. And that's the kind of game we're going to see this Sunday, so stay away.
If they even play on Sunday. If they even play on Sunday.
Yes.
I think this is a tricky game for daily fantasy sports. I would stay away from it, not only because the offenses aren't worth playing, but even if you're considering playing one of these defenses, like the Jets are pretty cheap at DraftKings this week, I would kind of steer clear because I'd be nervous that the game might get postponed enough that those players won't actually count towards your lineups, especially in lineups where you have to lock your lineups on Thursday night, like FanDuel. I'd be just staying away from this game altogether. So
I will say though, there's still a couple days away from the game. Who knows if they get their army of shovelers and the field is clear and it's not snowing, it's just cold, then maybe there's some value there. The one guy I will say that I like from this game as a flyer, a guy who torched the Jets, is Sammy Watkins, but I don't think I would actually start him.
Don't get crazy, Alex. Don't backslide into the snowdrift.
Yes.
Just stay away. Stay away. Let's talk about Tennessee at Philly. Someone asks on Twitter. Their name is so thank you, for writing it.
We do know.
And I appreciate that confidence in our ability to answer your question. He's asking, or she is asking, can I drop Sproles to pick up some weapons? Hopefully those are players, not actual weapons. He has, on his bench, been storing Sproles for a long time, thinking maybe this is a handcuff to LaShawn McCoy. What do you think about Sproles' value and McCoy's value here? Personally, I think that Chris Polk is the handcuff for McCoy if you're going to have him a handcuff. But I think it's safe to drop Sproles if you've got your eye on some other guy. What do you think here?
Well, I mean, just like anything, it depends, right? What weapons are we talking about? Are we talking about Jerick McKinnon or Ben Tate or something like that? Or is Josh Gordon somehow miraculously available in your league? So, I mean, yeah, if it's somebody worth picking up that's going to start at some point in the next few weeks, then pick him up. But if you're just going to stash somebody else on your bench, you may as well keep Sproles because I mean, maybe Polk is a handcuff, but I think that Sproles' value still increases if McCoy gets knocked out. So, just depends on who it is.
Yeah, and if you've got another big running back, getting a different handcuff instead of Sproles that has a more clear-cut situation might be worthwhile. I might take a gamble on one of these Cleveland guys instead of keeping Sproles just because their upside's probably higher. Sproles' upside is going to be capped no matter what, I think. He had a couple of big games early in the year, but I don't know. He's just not going to do that regularly, and you're not going to feel confident in starting him in that situation even if McCoy's out because, he'll split time with Polk. Another guy to mention in this game is Delaney Walker is still trying to get back through the concussion protocol. They're hopeful that he'll play this week. But, if you're looking for a deeper tight end option, kind of pay attention to that injury information as it becomes clear later in the week. Let's talk about Jacksonville at Indy. Now, here's a game that's going to be super close at Indianapolis, but there's lots of Indy players to talk about here.
I expect this to be a half-point game. 14 to 13 and a half. Yeah, no, right? It's an interesting game to kind of forecast what's going to happen because the Trent Richardson isn't very good, but he's probably going to get a ton of touches. So that's
This
worth
just in,
something.
folks. This just in. Newsflash: Trent Richardson is not very good.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where they're favored by 14 points. They're going to score a lot of points, and I expect Andrew Luck to be a huge part of that no matter what. So we'll talk about some of that later. But I think that it's offensively all around, just both sides, both teams. I think it's worth investing in those offenses.
Yeah, I like. We'll talk about this more a little later, but here's a little DFS tease. I like Andrew Luck as a cash game quarterback. He's pretty expensive.
Stealing my thunder.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I mean, that's the kind of quarterback you pay up for in a cash game situation to feel that safety and security.
Just like Aaron Rodgers last week, yes.
Just like Aaron Rodgers last week, exactly. And, obviously Ahmad Bradshaw is done for the year, so Trent Richardson could see more looks. Now, some people will do sort of this inverse stack in a cash game that's interesting, and this might be a good situation for it, where you will roster both Trent Richardson and Andrew Luck. And that sounds a little crazy because you're like, well, running back and quarterback together, that's kind of crappy. But if you're playing conservative in a cash game and you know that this team's going to blow out Jacksonville and score a lot of touchdowns, you can be pretty confident that almost all of them are going to go through those two players. So you could roster them both and get a lot of touchdowns. So that's one strategy to take in a cash game, a little DFS preview there. Also, Dwayne Allen has an ankle injury. They're saying that maybe he'll play this week. I'm not so hopeful. Kobe Fleener had a big game with Allen out of the game and might be a guy to consider, especially, he might even be available because he's kind of been up and down all year. If Allen is out, is Fleener a guy that you might lean on?
He looked great last week. It was surprising because he has been awful his whole career. It was a year and a half. It's he drops the ball every other. But last week he looked fantastic. If Dwayne Allen is out, I actually like Fleener, especially. In DFS mainly, but we'll see. I mean, the Allen injury looked worse than it was, I guess, and I'd be actually a little surprised if he plays. So check his status on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe we should remember that Fleener hasn't looked so great all year, and maybe even with Allen out, we should be hesitant.
Yeah, don't chase points. You'd be chasing some points with Fleener, I think. So if you really heavily like him.
Yeah. The last two games in the 1 o'clock slate is Tampa Bay at Chicago and Detroit at New England. And we got a question sort of related that sort of ties these two games together from Brian on Twitter. He asks, did he make a good trade here? Now, first off, I feel like the I've already made this trade kind of question is a little bit dangerous. It's sort of like, do these pants make my butt look too big? So... I'm not saying this trade is bad, but just in general, I always tread lightly when answering these kind of questions.
The answer is no, never.
There's no right answer. You just don't answer. You run away.
Yeah. They're nice pants.
Yes. What, you like the pants, but not anyway, tangent. He's asking, he just traded away Matt Forte to get Gronk. Now, clarification, he's got a ton of running backs on his team. He has Ellington, Le'Veon Bell, and Jeremy Hill also. So I would say in this particular case, don't get too hung up on sort of like winning the trade. I think that and he basically had no tight end. So this is one of those cases where you didn't win the trade, quote unquote, but it's good for your starting lineup, I feel like, to make a deal like this, even though in a vacuum, I don't really like this swap. How do you feel about that, Alex?
I think it was a great trade. If you got the best tight end in the league who's scoring points like crazy, and Forte, he's a great anchor at run good guys to replace him with. So if you're going from 3 points to 13 standard points a game at tight end, that's a huge win.
Yeah, I think this will work out really well for Brian. And kind of on this same game here, the Detroit at New England game, Jonas Gray had a huge game last week, 37 rushes, 201 yards, 4 touchdowns. But I would say proceed with caution here a little bit because Gray's schedule is crazy the rest of the way. Are you all over the Gray train here, the gravy train?
Well, the last time I checked, Bill Belichick still coached the New England Patriots. So... I'm not a Gray train. Sell him immediately if you can. I don't expect any sort of performance like this again. Yeah, he might have another big game, but this week it could be Shane Vereen that catches 10 passes for 100 yards.
Yeah, they've got Detroit this week, which is a tough matchup on the ground, especially between the tackles. And then they've also still got left on their schedule Buffalo, Miami, and the Jets. They're
All
playing a
tough
tough division,
defenses.
all tough run defenses. So I'm not expecting a lot out of Gray. He gets a matchup against Green Bay in a couple of weeks, and that one could be good. But overall, I think Gray is not going to see a whole lot of fantasy production the rest of the year. Let's move on to those 4 p.m. Eastern games. There's 4 of them, and our favorite team, the Miami Dolphins, are going to be facing off against the battered down Denver Broncos, who could only manage 7 points against St. Louis. Miami should win this easily, right, Alex?
I mean, St. Louis held them to 7 points. That means Miami should shut them out, right? They shut out the Chargers a couple weeks ago, right? I'm expecting a shutout. Don't start Peyton Manning. I'm just kidding.
Miami's going to get smoked in this game.
Yeah.
Denver is so mad right now. But Denver's got like
Peyton Manning's going to throw 3 touchdowns to Jacob Tamme. That's what's going to happen.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like who's going to get the action here for Denver because Monte Ball re-aggravated his groin injury. He's out. Ronnie Hillman is going to be out for a bunch more weeks. He's done. Emmanuel Sanders got a concussion. Julius Thomas has an ankle injury. Do they have anyone for Peyton Manning to hand off to or throw to, or is he just going to throw it to himself and run into the end zone?
Peyton Manning's going to run the triple option, and he's going to have 150 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. That's just amazing to think about. Just imagine that for the next 5 minutes.
It's about as likely as watching Rodney Dangerfield do the triple Linding in Back to School. It's just like, no. Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, is this the Cody Latimer show? Jacob Tamme? Who steps up here?
You know what? It's the rookie receiver. It's the year of the rookie receiver. So, Cody Latimer has yet to make any sort of splash. So maybe it is the week that he picks up. But, I think it's going to be a lot of Demaryius Thomas and Wes Welker. I think C.J. Anderson, we saw how many passes he caught out of the backfield last week. I don't love either Anderson or Juwan Thompson just because Miami's defense is pretty good. But, yeah, Jacob Tamme could catch some be a big factor. I think Manning will be fine. I think that it was actually a really bad thing for Miami that the Broncos lost so badly last week because now they're going to be ready this week.
Yeah, they're going to be totally upset. And I still like C.J. Anderson in this matchup, even though it's a tough defense. I think Anderson will do well in the passing game, and I think that'll help pad probably lighter stats in the running game. And I think they could get up big in this game, unfortunately, and that means Anderson could see more work there, even pounding against kind of a tough front. Let's talk about St. Louis at San Diego. Speaking of St. Louis beating down the Denver Broncos, they get a chance to beat down the team Miami beat down, San Diego. How do you see this one shaking out? We've got Ryan Matthews was kept fresh last week. He had 17 touches for 71 yards. That seems kind of like a Ryan Matthews game to me. I mean, like 16 to 20 touches, not a touchdown, 70 to 80 yards. Isn't this kind of what Ryan Matthews is?
I guess. By the transitive property, St. Louis is going to beat the Chargers. 27 to -3.
It's basic math, people.
Basically speaking. No, I think the Chargers are at home, so I think that's bodes a little bit better. Their offense has been struggling. It's tough to tell how well they're going to play. But they were on fire earlier this season. Phillip Rivers is still good. I think they could still pick it up. I don't love Matthews, but I think he's going to get a ton of touches. I think he's a pretty good cash play this week. We'll talk more about that later again. But yeah, you're right. He's kind of had the quintessential Ryan Matthews game last week. If he doesn't get in the end zone, he's just all right. He might catch a few more passes this week. Again, he was kept fresh. So hopefully that means he'll get some more touches this week, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think the San Diego offensive line hopefully will start to get healthier here. I think they're going to have a tough time against the St. Louis pass rush, which is, if that O-line isn't holding up, St. Louis is going to eat Phillip Rivers alive. Brad is asking us a question related to this game. He's asking if he should start Steven Jackson or Trey Mason in PPR this week. And, Trey Mason's going up against that going up against San Diego, who has kind of been up and down against the run this year. Do you like Trey Mason or Steven Jackson this week?
I'll tell you what, Steven Jackson has become my Thomas Jones. I just don't like him no matter what. So I think it's a good matchup for Jackson, so I think it's actually kind of a toss-up at this point, but I'd rather have the young guy with the upside at this point, so I'd roll with Mason here.
Yeah, agreed. I got burned a little bit by Jackson last week thinking it was a good matchup, and Jackson's just kind of like meh this point in his career, so I'm kind of done leaning on him unless I want 6 points and a cloud of dust. Let's talk about Washington at San Francisco. RG3, we
He's
thought
dead
we
to
were
me.
stashing you.
He's
Thought
dead
we
to
were
me.
stashing you. Yeah, he's dead to us. If he couldn't do anything against Tampa Bay and looked especially terrible against Tampa Bay,
I was all in on RG3 last week, and
yeah.
he totally let us down.
Yeah. I agree. What are you going to do? I mean, and ESPN's Steve Young is now reporting that the old Washington coaching staff is saying that there's questions about RG3's work ethic, and that maybe this is could spell doom for the Redskins until RG3 is gone.
This will spell doom. For Washington, yeah. Nothing, not the past 10 years. Okay, I think that these kinds of reports are you take them with a grain of salt. You don't know exactly because it's these anonymous sources, old coaching staffs, whatever, with axes to grind. But I mean, it just doesn't look good in Washington right now, and they're circling the drain. I think so. Just I would avoid that offense. We got Deshaun Jackson with the upside, and then Jordan Reed or Niles Paul, depending on injuries.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And quick hits on a couple of these other games. The last 4 o'clock game, Arizona at Seattle. Larry Fitzgerald is dealing with a grade 2 MCL sprain. He says he's going to try to play through it. This could be a really ugly game at Seattle, so I would kind of avoid that Arizona passing attack.
Grade 2 is no joke. I wouldn't expect him to play.
Yeah, exactly. Grade 1, maybe. Grade 2, that would be pretty hardcore. Fitz is a pretty hardcore guy, though. We'll see. I still wouldn't start him against Seattle. Sunday Night Football, we've got Dallas at the New York Giants, and Rashad Jennings is another running back, kind of like Ryan Matthews, coming back and getting 18 carries for 59 yards and 4 receptions for 8 yards. This, 22 touches, that doesn't feel like easing back into, the game. That seems like a pretty solid touch count for him. What do you think about Rashad Jennings going forward?
I like Rashad Jennings a lot. I think that the injury was unfortunate, but he was getting a ton of touches before the injury, and it seems like he's going to get a lot of touches going forward. So, and he's a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield, unlike Andre Williams. So I think that's a good thing. I think he's good for something like 22 touches a game. Perhaps a little bit better results catching the ball. 4 catches for 8 yards isn't very good, but I like him.
Yeah, I like him going forward as well. And then the Monday Night Football game, you've got Baltimore at New Orleans, and kind of the big news out of New Orleans is that Brandon Cooks is sent to IR with an injured thumb, and we're trying to figure out who might benefit from this. New Orleans is an offense that tends to spread things around, but a couple other running backs are still battling injury with Pierre Thomas and Kyrie Robinson still kind of trying to get back. Do you think Colston or Stills maybe benefits from Cooks being out?
I tell you, I don't know. I liked the Kenny Stills pickup this week. If you have him on waiver wire, I think he's a good GPP. Dart to throw. He's pretty cheap. I don't really trust this offense right now. It's hard. It's really weird to say that about Drew Brees and that offense, but they're gonna. Even Jimmy Graham's not having big games every week, so I don't know that I would trust anybody right now.
Yeah, and the last bit of news, we got 2 teams on bye this week, Pittsburgh and Carolina. Pittsburgh dropped LeGarrette Blount after he left the field early during their Monday Night Football win, and he's no longer fantasy relevant as if he was fantasy relevant to begin with, correct?
I mean, that's a good way to get fired. Yeah, just leave. Leave your job. So
I'm leaving the podcast, Alex. Sorry.
You're fired. You're fired, Austin Lee. And now it's my show.
No, I'm back. I'm back.
Darn it.
I cleared waivers.
You're like, it's like that Jimmy Fallon bit where the host retires every night and then comes back after.
Nice. I love it.
So, anyway.
That's kind of our...
What were we talking about? We were talking about LeGarrette Blount.
Yes. It doesn't matter. That's the
point. Yeah, these are teams on bye. Why are we talking about them?
Yeah.
Let's move on to DraftKings. Let's go.
Yeah, let's talk about our day gaming stuff. If you ever want to see our rankings on any of these players we talked about, you can go find them over at the9route.com. We update it to the last minute on Sunday mornings, so right up until those first kickoffs. So be sure to check out those to answer all your lineup questions before you set your lineups. Let's talk about DraftKings. Alex, let's hear some of your stacks of the week over at DraftKings, and then I'll give you mine.
All right, so last week I made a mistake, and I didn't give you a second stack of the week, which I should have. I did write it down. I wrote it down in my column, Daily Musings. But I had that RG3 stack. Let's forget I said that. And I also liked. I also really liked Andy Dalton, AJ Green. That stack worked out really well. So I actually have that stack this week as well. Because for some reason I didn't go up a ton. He's only 6,300. AJ Green is only 7,300, and they get a great matchup against the Houston Texans, who have given up a ton of points to opposing passing games.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, although Vegas has this game being a pretty low-scoring affair, so I'd be a little nervous about this setup. Their total's about 13.6 at DraftKings, 13.6K. I like in that range. I think I would prefer to take, I'm looking at my list here, my favorite stack this week is actually Cutler and Brandon Marshall. It's a little bit more expensive at 14.8K versus Tampa Bay, but I don't think that real Tampa Bay was last week's shutting down RG3. I think the real Tampa Bay is going to rear their ugly head this week when Jay Cutler and Brandon.
They're only 2 games out of first place, so I mean, it's like maybe they'll play really hard and be a really tough defense.
This is going to end with a 5-win team winning the division, and the NFC South is going to be the embarrassment of the entire league.
They should make it a rule that you cannot make the playoffs if you're under 500. They should just let another division let someone in. But anyway, so no, another favorite stack of mine. It's on the expensive side, and we talked about it earlier. But I really like Andrew Luck as a cash game guy. He's going to get a lot of points this week. I think he's going to have probably 300 plus yards and at least 2 touchdowns passing, and he'll probably have some rushing yardage. And a guy to stack him with, it's a bit of an expensive stack, but T.Y. Hilton, he had a bad week last week. I think he's going to bounce back and have a big game this week.
Yeah, I like the bounce back for Hilton call. He's only 7,600 at DraftKings. And then looking at some other quarterbacks, maybe not necessarily to stack, give me a guy that you like this week.
I really like really sneaky, cheap guy to put in, Zach Mettenberger. For Tennessee, he's only $5,300, and J.J. Zachariason, I have to give him credit because he was talking about this earlier on Twitter. But the Eagles have given up a ton of fantasy points to quarterbacks, guys who are not starters anymore, like Chad Henne. And Zach Mettenberger is just the next guy in line to do that, I think, this week.
I think that's a good call. Yeah, JJ is late round QB, and he's a big fan of streaming quarterbacks. I could see Mettenberger as a good daily and streamer this week. At running back, I've got a few different guys that I like, sort of in the 4,000 to 5,000 range. Denard Robinson's playing Indy this week, and we saw what Gray did last week. I mean, Gray and Robinson are different players, but that Indy rush defense is atrocious. So I like Robinson at 5,600. Rashad Jennings, we talked about. He's going to get a lot of touches. Maybe he's a little safer play, maybe a cash game play at 5,100. And I like Trey Mason's value at 4,200, or even gambling in a tourney on Isaiah Crowell at 3,800 at Atlanta. Atlanta's a terrible run defense. Who do you got on your list?
I like those names a lot. I really like another cash game guy that I like a lot. He's expensive. DeMarco Murray. I think he's going to have a big game in New York. He had 128 yards and a touchdown last time they played each other. He's coming off the bye, so he should be a little bit fresh. So I think that he had 28 carries in that game. Hopefully he doesn't have so many this time, and he's still efficient. You mentioned Isaiah Crowell. I really like him, but I also like Terrence West, who's cheaper at DraftKings. He's 3,400. I think both of these guys are really good plays. I actually like West as a cash game guy. I think he's going to get enough volume to be a good. If you're going to be spending money on guys like Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton or DeMarco Murray, then you can use West as a pretty good cash game option who's going to get a lot of touches. And then Ryan Matthews, we talked about him earlier. He's only 4,600. Another cash game guy. Who I think is going to get, probably 18 to 22 touches, as you mentioned. So, pretty good play.
Yeah, I like those cash game calls there. Then at receiver, I think one of the more popular plays this week is going to be Josh Gordon as a tournament play. He's 6,300 over at DraftKings, which, it maybe feels like on the high side for a guy coming back for his first game in a really long time. But the upside is so big that I think that he's going to be highly owned in tournament play. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at $6,300. Who's a guy you like?
It's funny you say that about Gordon. I forgot who it was. Somebody tweeted that they hoped that the DFS sites would make everybody put their money where their mouths are, and make him super expensive this week to see who really was buying him. But $6,300 is not a bad price for a guy who could go off. You're right. I like Mike Wallace this week. He's only 4,900, and this is in Denver, so the Denver Broncos are heavily favored, not heavily, but they're favored pretty well, and they have the over/under is pretty high. I expect it to be a game where Ryan Tannehill is going to have to throw the ball a lot, and Mike Wallace, although they don't have that deep connection still, I think he could pop off for 5 or 6 catches for 100+ yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, I think the difference we're seeing this year with Wallace is not necessarily that their deep connection's been better, but that they're using Wallace in more creative ways to get him the ball in ways that aren't just deep throws. So I like that call now that he's down at a pretty low value. I also like Kenny Stills at $4,200 if you're looking for a little bit of a cheaper guy. I think that's a tournament play because you're kind of gambling on who's going to get the work in New Orleans. Cooks out. I think 4,200 is a good gamble for Stills against Baltimore there. It looks like you've also got Anquan Boldin on your list. I like that call. And then, Des Bryant maybe as a cash game play, playing it safe with the more expensive receiver there at the New York Giants. Tight end. There's a few guys on my list. I think Niles Paul could be interesting at the baseline price of $3K if Jordan Reed is out. San Francisco is kind of a tough defense there, but they can be hit over the middle by the tight end a little bit. And Larry Donnell at 3,900 I really like as well as a cash game play. How about you?
I tell you what, in cash games, I'm really just trying to get Rob Gronkowski in my lineups. He's like the cash game king. If you can fit him in there somehow, he's gonna get a ton of points. So he's got a lot of upside anyway. So he's got a guy that's got a low floor and a super high ceiling. I mean, a high floor and a really high ceiling. Not a low floor, no. And then Zach Ertz on the opposite end of the spectrum on salary. He's only 3,100. He's a kind of a hit or miss guy, but he is getting some targets, and he's going up against Tennessee. So I think he's another low price option if you filled your lineup elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Ertz call. I like the Gronk call, but Brent Selleck has been getting a decent amount of work there. Not that I would want to go out and start Selleck, but I think he's sapping Ertz's potential here in this offense.
Well, we weren't going to agree on everything, so I'll just be right on this, and we'll move on.
Mock. This is the call I'm mocking this week. Zach Ertz call. It's all right. He's 3,100.
Yeah, no, right? If you're going to spend minimum salary, he's not a bad call.
Yeah, Gronk is usually the guy I go for in my lineups every week, except this week I'm finding it tough to find receiver value for some reason, and so I'm having a tough time fitting Gronkowski into my lineups and getting the receivers that I want into my lineups. So I probably won't be able to roster Gronk as often as I usually do, but he's a good, safe play if you can find those values elsewhere. Let's talk defenses and then move on to FanDuel real quick. I like San Francisco. I think is going to be a really popular cash game play this week at only 3,100. Tell me about your defense.
I like San Diego. I think they're at home. I don't love them, but they're only 2,900, and I'm trying to go, save money here because there's a lot of expensive guys that I like this week. So San Diego at 2,900 at home against St. Louis, against Sean Hill. They could maybe get some turnovers, some sacks, and perhaps even score, but not a bad dart at 2,900, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a decent call there. And let's move on to FanDuel. I have not prepared any stacks or players over at FanDuel. I primarily play at DraftKings. So
I primarily play at DraftKings, and I still prepare. I'm fully prepared for the show, Austin.
I appreciate
Unlike
that.
some people.
That. No. Oh,
You're fired.
I got it. Oh, no, I'm back. I'm back, guys. Cleared waivers. I'm good. You guys can play me again. I didn't mean to be a jerk.
We love to steal bits. That's what we do. We steal bits. So
you steal a bit from somebody? I thought it was a call.
We kind of, it was sort of. Anyway, back to FanDuel. My stack of the week there, and a guy that I like also, DraftKings, but we didn't mention him earlier, Colin Kaepernick. He's only 7,300 at FanDuel. It's a really good price. He's going up against Washington, the team that let Josh McCown throw all over them last week, throw up all over them. And then stacking him with Anquan Boldin, who's getting a lot of targets, and he's only at 6,800. I think it's a pretty good stack for tournaments.
Yeah, I like that call. I think that's a good one. And then talking about some running backs here, it seems like some of the same guys are decently priced.
Yeah, there's a lot of the same guys that I like. We talked about Ryan Matthews and Isaiah Crowell. Those are pretty good guys at FanDuel. Back to the quarterbacks, I skipped over him, but Sean Hill at only 6,300. I know that I told you about the San Diego defense, but it's not that good of a defense. don't start Hill and the San Diego defense, but he's only 6,300 at FanDuel.
You're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth here.
Yes,
I don't know, man.
out of some, yeah, it's both sides of something. But
both sides of your mustache.
yeah, so,
I don't know.
at receiver, I talked about Sammy Watkins, but forget it. I wrote him down, but I'm scratching him off. Strike through. Forget, he's too expensive and just too risky. But Ruben Randall, I like Ruben Randall, 6,700 against Dallas at home. That's not a bad price there.
Nice. Yeah, I like that call. I like the Ruben Randall call. And I see you've got Charles Clay, the Dolphin, going against Denver on your tight end list at only.
He's close to minimum. Well, not close to minimum, but he's only 5,200 at FanDuel. And we talked about the defenses and in Buffalo and New York. I have, there's the Bills at 5,200. That's not a bad price. And again, it could go. It could be the problem being that if they don't play the game, then you're hosed. But hopefully, you will find out sooner than later about that.
Yeah, totally. And it could be a freaking blizzard monsoon of snow outside of the stadium, but as long as the stadium inside is clear, like a giant toilet bowl, then it should be fine. So, keep your ear to the ground on that one. All right, Alex, that's all we've got. We have 4 minutes before my mic explodes in its traditional 10 p.m. fashion. What you got any closing thoughts, any articles or whatnot we should be looking out for?
I'm writing my daily musings every week now over at Football Guys. I'm actually doing a recap, and this week it's going to be an autopsy on last week's. But you go check it out. It'll be out on Friday.
Clear.
Yes.
Clear. Yeah, sorry about that, buddy. This week's going to be a lot better, and hey, at least you got refunded a good chunk of your money because DraftKings servers went down or whatnot.
Yeah. Yes, that happened.
Something. So I'm trying to pull together some matchup data, lots of crunchy stats and numbers that'll hopefully be up at Football Guys either this week or next week. Be on the lookout for that. It's just a huge brain database dump of data about how offenses perform against defenses and vice versa. So I'll tweet out about that. Be on the lookout for that in the coming weeks. That's all we got for tonight's show. Thank you, Alex. As always a pleasure, always fun. You can find all the things related to our podcast on our website, the9route.com. You can find Alex at Twitter, at Alex Miglio, and you can find me over there at Austin NFL. Strike up a conversation with us. We love to answer questions and goof around and whatnot, so hit us up on Twitter, and you can find our content over at footballguys.com. So, until next time, may your players stay healthy, your sleepers wake up, and your Monday nights be filled with miraculous comebacks. Good night.
Beep, 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 beep.